What's the 2025 there? Wow. I'm going to be so sporadic and all over the place today, covering a lot of points, a lot of news, a lot of things in social media. And I just got home, got my nails done too when I went out. But so that's why I'm a little later, excuse me, with my video. But anyways, just because this is big in the news, Alex Jones, he had went on Jimmy Dore's show, I guess in the last couple of days. It was kind of awkward to watch. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I did watch a fair bit, and I understood both their points. And but they didn't. They weren't kind of like meshing. It seemed, and so it was little off. But I think that Alex Jones is kind of fed up with everything going on in the news regarding Erica Kirk and Candace Owens, etc. Thinks it's taking away from what's going on with like World War III, in sight or possibly already ongoing for a few years now. And the Epstein list, so many other things that he has been talking about. He's also been talking about the assassination, etc., and about, again, people within the LGBTQ plus IA community that were also, again, in communication within the days leading up to Charlie Kirk's assassination, essentially talking about it. And that was shut down by people like Kash Patel. And so, like, why, like, these are interesting leads for people to look into. And so I understand why Alex Jones was getting a little frustrated with Jimmy, because I think that Jimmy Dore, he does, he has a bit of a bias when it comes to Candace Owens. And it's not to take away from her free speech or anything like that. It's just, some things are relevant and some things not so much. And then even with Nick Fuentes, he also, I guess, in the last couple of days, also put Jimmy Dore on blast, for a few things. And Jimmy Dore responded with Kirk Metzner, and I guess key points that they keep on bringing up, and these are fair points, is how come he didn't get arrested during January 6th when multiple other people did, including Owen Schroyer and others, and Jake Lang. And so it was just very interesting. And so there's always plants, ladies and gentlemen, within groups, within movements, and these are people, again, that are the informants for the deep state. It's unfortunate. I'm not saying that Nick Fuentes is one of those people. It's just like I'm already biased regarding like a few things where he just seems like untouched, but then also like with his views and what he has shared publicly regarding women, etc. It's just it's not very Christian of him at all. It's definitely not something that Jesus would be promoting, and in fact, quite the opposite. And so it just frustrates me that people within the Christian movement, we've been infiltrated by people, again, that are poor examples and making things so much worse. Jake Lang, again, if he was there for the right reasons and not a paid agitator or crisis actor or role player, like a lot of people I've called out for the January 6th Fedsurrection, if he was there for the right reasons and he didn't commit any violence and stuff like that, then this guy absolutely should not have gotten in jail, right? And so this was something that was blown out of proportion in so many different ways, and people from within that wanted this to be a riot and wanted this to be a deadly violent riot. I said that many times. But anyway, what he does with the bacon over the Quran, like the dry humping goats and things like that. Like, these are all things that it takes away from the movement. It absolutely takes away. And this is, it's not to justify what these terrorists did. And by the way, terrorists, people are calling them teenagers and stuff like that. They were over the age of 18, by the way, just to be clear. And these were terrorists that threw a friggin' bomb. Luckily, it didn't detonate into the crowd and kill people. Like, God bless for that. But they were ISIS terrorists, and these are tactics that have been used in the Middle East for years. And so, what do you expect when you and I mean this respectfully, when you import people in and there's no vetting, there's no background checks, there's none of that stuff being done, and now even in Canada, what do we have? We have people that are in sleeper cells, like known terrorists. People are saying it's 700. It's more than 700. That these are just the ones who are being appropriately monitored and tracked. And a lot of it has to do with staffing shortfalls and things like that as well, because we're bringing in a lot more people. So again, ergo, and again, with like so much exploitation available, with just how easy it is to exploit our systems, and not even tracked, like not even in the database. It's just wild. My rants. was either Steven Crowder or Matt Walsh. Might have been Matt Walsh, but I was watching some of his content. I do like a lot of his content, but again, there's some things that we just drastically and wildly disagree on. And I also hate the fact that he tries to again bring religion into this as a means to oppress people within society. When again, that is very much anti-Christian. It's very much anti-Jesus, a true feminist, especially of his time, and and what they want to push. So even with voter rights, there's some good points he was making about being authorized to be a voter. But I'm saying if you're a taxpayer and you're a citizen, like, and even if you're not a taxpayer, like if you're a Canadian citizen and you're able to give ID to vote, which should be required, then it is what it is. But he was saying about like with one household, one vote. So if you have a husband and a wife and children, and because the economy that are over the age of 18 but just can't leave their homes because they just can't afford it, they're saying that ultimately it would be one vote. And I'm assuming that he means that the vote would default to the man of the house. And so again, just like removing like the 19th Amendment from the Constitution, like it's just so anti-Christian. It's so ridiculous. And again, it's against the law. All right. And so why would we want to remove our rights away? So I was talking about this the other day with people because they're saying, oh, your rights, when you get them, they never get removed. And I was saying, well, actually, that's incorrect, because for thousands of years, there have been rights given to women or certain groups, and they have been taken away, sometimes even within like the first few years. And like property rights, the right to divorce, the right to vote, things like that, given and then taken away. I've given examples even in France from the 1700s. So many more examples, though. And yeah. And then also with that, we were having a discussion regarding Christianity, and there's just like a lot of false and misrepresentation of scripture that are being utilized to oppress people. And it's just very interesting. And so I did a Google search, and I really liked what it had come up with, because people were also saying like, oh, in Christianity, it's you can't. This is going to be graphic, but like you can't masturbate, you can't watch porn, and you can only have sex to procreate, and all these crazy things. And I'm like, have you read the Bible? And the answer is always no, and in incomplete form. And so you have here. I'm going to look at this as well, but. Chat's not giving me as good as Google did last night, but the purpose of sexual intimacy, it serves multiple purposes in Christianity, sexual intimacy. So strengthening emotional and spiritual bonds, protecting against temptation, renewing the marriage covenant, and fostering deep trust and vulnerability. Mutual selflessness. God calls spouses to yield their bodies to each other in love. 1 Corinthians 7:4. Prioritizing their partner's needs and pleasure over self-gratification. Holistic intimacy. True marital intimacy includes cultivating friendship, so cultivating the soul bonds, sexuality, cultivating the body bond, the sexual bond, and shared spirituality, as emphasized in biblical teachings. Guiding principles. Intimacy should be marked by tenderness, respect, and self-control, never selfishness or domination. The church also warns against behaviors like pornography, excessive or degrading acts, and any sexual activity outside marriage. Christian couples are encouraged to nurture intimacy through regular communication, prayer, intentional time together, and seeking guidance when needed. When approached with reverence and love, marital intimacy becomes a powerful way to glorify God and reflect His eternal love. So I did like that, a bit of that breakdown. Okay, it's powerful, covenantal, life-giving, and morally serious. Oh, thanks, chat. Okay, so a clean biblical summary. Sex is for covenant union, becoming one flesh, love, fruitfulness, comfort, mutual giving, and joy within a faithful bond under God. Sex begins in creation, so it's not a sin. The Bible introduces male and female union before what we call the fall. Genesis 1:27 through 28, male and female created he them, be fruitful and multiply. So be fruitful means to create, whether it be, obviously kids would be primarily. And if you can't do that for whatever reason, then it would be things like, also in concurrence with that, if you could, but like farming, like so agriculture, communities, like educators, nurses, like in positions, giving to charities, donations, things like that, charity, volunteer work, you name it, and then also being someone that is useful within the community and in your home. Garden season, farm season's coming up soon, next month. Genesis 2:24. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. That means sex is not presented as an accident, a necessary evil, something invented after sin. It is built into creation itself. Bodily union, relational union, covenant bonding, shared life. Yeah, okay, so sex in the Bible is not just recreation or reproduction. It is a sign and enactment of a deeper joining. Yeah, so even with that, for children are not the only purpose of sex, but they are one of its central created purposes in scripture. So biblically, sex is tied to life, inheritance, family, continuity of generations. Super important. And more women, I do agree, especially, in Canadian women, like should be giving birth, and there's so many reasons why they are not, right? And it's not just on them at all. In fact, I keep saying this, 40 to 50% of fertility issues are now because of men, and men also have a biological clock when it comes to quality of the sperm. So even at the age of 30, I showed this the other day, scientific studies coming out saying that you have significantly less, or rather significantly more genetic mutations that can be developed at 30 versus at 18 for a man. And the economy, and the fact that people, like even first time homeowners, can only afford to have their first home over the age of friggin' 40 at this point in Canada, and even then, good luck. And people like need shelter, protection, etc., in order to create a family under the eyes of God, if you're a Christian, especially. Okay, mutual giving, not unilateral control. The New Testament emphasizes mutuality in sexual intimacy. Let the husband render unto the wife due benevolence, and likewise also the wife unto the husband. The wife hath no power of her own body, but the husband, and likewise also the husband hath not power of his own body, but the wife. People like to forget the second part of that passage. And it's a very strong passage because it rejects sexual selfishness. It says, husbands owe wife, wife owes husband. Neither is absolute owner of self in marriage. Sex is mutual, not one-sided domination. Okay, I can go on from there. There's quite a few actually. So, okay, so why the Bible places boundaries around sex. It forbids adultery, fornication, exploitation, prostitution in many contexts, incest, coercion, lust detached from covenant. These are good rules, and these are actually codified into laws, especially Western laws. And people held accountable. So like that's why law enforcement, military, et cetera, were created, was to assist with, again, people's natural or human behaviors, especially people that have been not taught or guided through their childhood, like any degree of morality or ethics and integrity. Because people they keep on trying to say that people have like this innate like will or capacity to be good, and I'm saying throughout history that, like, respectfully speaking, that is incorrect. Unless there's some kind of like a foundational framework tied to God in this aspect, then we've seen societies that have been incredibly primitive. They have been incredibly predatory to various populations. There's been cannibalism, witchcraft, underage marriages, like like not having property rights, not having voter rights, like you friggin' name it, and oppression of like such a huge percentage of the population, and children, like slave labor, and again, like people thinking that like as soon as you get your period, that makes you marriageable and at peak fertility windows. And by the way, disgusting. And these are things that are practiced in other countries right now. And so again, like what is being taught at the home, what is being taught in the schools, it's very important. Because as a child develops, as the brain develops, you do have to offer guidance and discipline, and again, some kind of moral code and structure, the rules of life, because where else are they going to get it? Okay, I'm going to go into my Instagram. I could go on a tangent on that, but like I feel like it's just
Yeah, but
okay. So this is Owens, Benjamin Owen. No, Owen Benjamin. That's who it is. My goodness. 20 times later. So Owen Benjamin, and this apparently was posted in 2020. So like 6 years ago.
it's men's fault. Like women require male leadership.
I'm just gonna refresh it. I might have missed a part of it.
For women are witches. Yeah, but it's men's fault. Like women require male leadership. You want to know all these men that bitch about, oh, women don't follow men. Women stop following men when men stop following God. Why would a woman follow a man who is not afraid of God, who does not follow God's law? My woman follows me. I make the decisions in the household. Well, she must be stupid and barefoot. She engineer, master's in engineering, stay-at-home mom. Would you like to know how? It's like all these men live materialistic, atheist lives. They care about their own needs. They get scared and they bitch and they complain, just like the goat. We can rewatch the goat. So the woman has to take on the masculine. If you don't act masculine, if you don't lead your woman,
100%.
she will lead herself. And when women lead themselves, they dye their hair purple and they act retarded. They get fat and they get mean.
Oh my God.
And they get cats. So when a woman says, oh, toxic masculinity, if you're a man who responds to that with your programming and you say, oh, so I'll just be more like soft and I'll do what you say, you're damning them. Because a man who fears God, a man who understands that there are bigger repercussions in this world than your girl being upset, if she says, oh, we need to do this or we need that, then it goes against what you know to be moral. Dude, the story of Adam and Eve is the ultimate warning. Eve wanted an apple. Adam knew it was wrong. That's the biggest part of the whole thing is Adam knew it was wrong, but went with what the woman said. What happens? He damned both of them. The woman naturally doesn't lead herself. That's why the family unit requires the man and the woman. The man's job is very important. The woman's job is very important. And if a woman's like, then I can't listen to this, do not sway. If a man stops following God, the woman will stop following the man. And so then what happens? The woman has to be the man and the woman at the same time. She has to work these endless hours and compete at the same time, having like sore nipples and cramping and like these, maybe there's a baby at home. It's hell. A woman requires her man to be stable and unemotional when she's having an emotionally hard time. And so these men that just complain, I want a conservative woman. I want a woman who wants to be married and have kids. All the women around here are whores and they're all bisexual. Yes, because you suck. How dare you, Big Bear? Must have been nice for you. Dude, I met Amy on the street in Los Angeles walking our dog. She was drinking a beer wearing Daisy Dukes. She had a strain of purple hair. Now she's a stay-at-home mom, part of a homestead. Like we have a very stable, loving life. We're on our third child. Very happy, extremely grateful human being, healthy, hotter now than she was then. How do you think that happens? Most liberal women.
Yeah, I agreed with a lot of what he said. And oh my goodness, Lori Idlout, I think they say her name, NDP. She switched sides. This is so undemocratic, and we absolutely need to have a constitutional challenge. This is the only way this is going to change, because the predators that are involved in these friggin' actions, they are not the ones that are going to make the rules or the changes that are needed in order to stop this from happening again. And I'm going to reiterate, like, I don't think this should happen. I don't care what party you're involved in. That's not what the people voted for. People did not vote for a liberal MP in, I think it's Nunavut. People did not vote for a liberal MP for these people that were conservative, these friggin' traitors to their people and to Canada, by the way, because look at the friggin' platform of the Liberals and look what they're sharing. It's not a new government. I keep on reiterating that, especially cabinet. And these people should be fired, charged, arrested. But again, we have weak men, respectfully speaking, that are in positions where they're the ones that are supposed to be doing the jobs of firing these people, charging these people, investigating these people, etc., and they're not. And it might be because, again, they've been, they're void of God. Because even in the Bible, it talks about, like, what to do with friggin', like, rapists and murderers and well, especially pedophiles. Like even like God talks about how, you know, it would be better to drown them, like talking about people who hurt children. And so people say that, you know, oh, you know, I can't believe in God or Christianity because like, is all of this God's plan, all the shitty stuff that's happened on in the world? And I'm like, well, there's actually like in the Bible, there are not only lessons, but there's also guidelines, again, that have been codified into law on what to do to people that commit certain acts. Okay, and who to protect, protecting the most vulnerable, the fatherless, etc. And anyway, missing the lessons there. Again, I went all over the place. I'm gonna get back here. Anyways, now we're looking at a possible majority government. And if it was a good government, I'd be okay with that. But this is the shittiest government, corrupted grifter government in Canadian history. And it's wild. So Lori Idlout, absolutely a traitor to Canada. So she got a lot of incentives, a lot of money thrown at her riding in the last few months. And again, so it's just grooming. And but I mean, they've already been given so much money from Canadian taxpayers now for literally decades and decades and decades. And so what happened with that money? Like, why does she need even more money? Hundreds and millions, like billions. Like, why do you need all of that money when you have like such a small riding? Like, yes, geographically speaking, you have a large area that you rule over or manage, not rule over. I mean, it just kind of seems like that's what you're doing. But it's like, I think it's like 6,000 or 8,000 people like within her constituency. So like, are you kidding me? Out of 42 or 40 million people, not a lot of people. Millions and millions and millions and hundreds of millions of dollars, like just in the last few months. Like, and I'm all for, again, creating industry in areas, but not at the expense of, like, again, like selling out Canada to this friggin' government. Like, what are you doing? Like, this is going to be so short-lived. Anyway, and a disappointment. And she's been calling out the liberals and the funding bullshit for years, and then she switches over. Oh, my goodness. Again, there's just been so much in the news. New York Police Department furious at Mayor Zoran Mamdani for snubbing hero chief after Islamic bomb attempt. Instead of honoring the two-star cop who leaped barricades to nab the bomber, the hosts pro-Palestinian, he hosts pro-Palestinian activist Mahmoud Khalil, sending such an awful message to rank and file. I shared a photo of that guy, that freaking hero cop. He was so badass. And oh, they don't show it here. But the bomb, it was meant for I believe it was Jake Lang and that group. So it wasn't directed at Zoran Mamdani at all. Quite the opposite. And the guy, like, who he used basically as a step stool or whatever to throw it, zero survival skills, zero. And it's just wild to me. Yeah, I've talked about Hydro One with the ridiculous surges in energy bills, drastically different from month to month, even though I'm not doing anything differently. And in fact, reducing electricity in a lot of areas as well, and still getting way bigger bills. So this is a Maryland man delivers powerful comments on his sky-high power bill.
Alone. There is no reason why my 1 month
He's saying he lives alone.
bill should be $675 when the house is pitch black. When we talk about these data centers, there is no question that the reason why our bills are as high as they are is because you've got these multi-billion-dollar corporations, Meta, Amazon, who come into our communities, who take all of their money and use it, don't pay a dime in taxes, and this is why our bills are the way that they are. We are making all the concessions as consumers in terms of what we can do to lower our bill. Lights, no heat. We're going to bed at night. I go to bed at night with no heat on at all. I turn my heat off at night and get in the bed so that my heat doesn't run all night long. When will the elected officials, our local Prince George's County officials, take our fight to Annapolis and then take our fight to the governor, who will then take our fight to the feds? We know that multi-billion-dollar corporations don't pay a dime, and this is why we are suffering.
Exactly.
Our quality of life
And tax loopholes, filing their taxes from other countries or safe havens.
is in the toilet because the people who have been elected to represent us, you guys are not doing your job. Too many people have died who have been hung and beaten to have a seat at the table, and now you've got 90% of Black people running this government, and you guys are treating us the same way we would be treated if we were still back in Jim Crow and 50s. Not doing your job, and that's the problem. I live
$675 a friggin' month, lives alone, and like literally shuts his power off regularly, even in the friggin' winters in Maryland, which, you know, like this is just crazy. Crazy. Anything else I wanted to say about that? Nope. Okay. Thomas Massey.
Imagine.
Anyway, my bias has to do with actions. And Thomas Massey, honestly, like I wish Canada had a Thomas Massey. I think Aaron Gunn is close, like I said the other day, but he's amazing.
Starting another fake manufactured war in the Middle East for Israel, something that you said you weren't going to do, after saying you're going to hold people accountable and drain the swamp with 0 high-level arrests. And then right in the middle of this conflict, this is what you decide to put out. Not going after any of the deep state, but going after true American first patriots who just want justice with all of the Epstein stuff. This is what you spend your time doing. And here's what Massey said that Trump did when he was on the floor trying to get justice for the Epstein victims.
The president got mad at me. You know, you've heard me say this before. He called me on the phone 3 times while I was on the floor of the House. I let it go to voicemail 3 times. I didn't.
Trump is proving more and more that he is protecting his friends and his family at the expense of the American people, which to me is just, anyway, I called it.
Have him in my phone. I didn't know it was him, but it was all zeros, you know, like, right. And I figured there's only one person can get a phone number with all zeros. So I did call the White House back, and they put Trump on the line, and he said, "I'm coming at you like you've never seen. Never in your life before have you seen the way in which I will come at you. I'm more popular than you in Kentucky, and you know it. I'm backing your primary opponent, and you're gonna lose." And then I tried to talk to him about the Constitution and that it required us to vote, and he started screaming at me for 3 minutes, and then he repeated everything again, and hung up on me.
So my question to you is this: if you had to choose one of these 2 guys in politics, who would it be and why? Would love your comments below.
Yeah. I'm not American, but I would be Massey all the way. Oh. This is someone that has cancer, a veteran, and he's been trying to get help. And it was actually, anyway, I'll let him talk.
I'm a Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, in leadership at Headquarters of Marine Corps. My name is Sergeant Kevin Lee Lloyd, United States Marine Corps, T3 Fox Company. I'm a combat veteran, a father, and I'm now actively fighting stage 4 colorectal cancer that has spread to my brain, a direct result of toxic burn pit exposure in Operations Iraqi Freedom and Operations Enduring Freedom. Today, I'm formally requesting that my record be corrected and that I be advanced to Staff Non-Commissioned Officer, Staff Sergeant E6. I completed 3 combat deployments. During that time, I was constantly exposed to burn pits. I was never placed on the burn pit registry. Years later, when I became sick, I was forced to wait an additional year before they recognized under the PACT Act. During my medical separation in 2015, I was experiencing pain all over my body, severe migraines, abdominal pain, and blood in my stool. Despite these symptoms, I was denied a colonoscopy because I was not yet 40 years old yet. I was misdiagnosed with internal and external hemorrhoids and with migraines, when in the truth I had colorectal cancer. The cancer was not formally diagnosed until March 2023, nearly 8 years later, when it had already advanced to stage 4 and spread to my brain. The misdiagnosis ended my career in the Marine Corps. and the years of missed opportunities for early detection have now endangered my life. Coming out Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, and leadership at headquarters.
God bless. Oh my goodness. Sergeant Kevin Lee Lloyd testimony before he died. In 2022, Congress passed the PACT Act to protect veterans exposed to toxic burn pits. Kevin was diagnosed with colorectal cancer in March 2023. Despite serving boots on the ground during 3 deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, he discovered he had never once been placed on the burn pit registry. Because of that failure, he had to fight for nearly a year just to receive coverage under the law that was supposed to protect him. Even after that coverage, he faced repeated delays and denials from the VA, including denials of specialist referrals, recommended treatments, and transfer to higher levels of care. Kevin died on November 9th, 2025, from stage 4 colorectal cancer caused by toxic exposures during his military service. It's just brutal. The day after he died, SecNav John Phelan announced to the world that a Marine's dying wish had been granted and that his children would be taken care of. But several days later, I received the decision from the Board for Correction of Naval Records. That document completely denies the Marine Corps' responsibility for the cancer that killed him. Kevin was granted only 60% medical retirement. Not one single thing he asked for was granted. Nothing has changed for our children. They still do not have survivor benefits. They still do not have TRICARE. I'm begging you to help get Kevin's testimony to the people who have the power to change this. So sad.
So back in 1997,
Phil Hartman, Saturday Night Live, 1997. Again, people that were warning us.
SNL legend Phil Hartman gave this pretty brilliant take on immigration. And I honestly had no idea Phil was this based. I mean, the guy sounded like a real patriot, but the crazy part is that these were pretty normal common sense views in the 90s. Today, if someone said the exact same thing, they'd probably be called a racist, a Nazi, and get completely blackballed from Hollywood. Watch this clip and let me know your thoughts in the comments.
A parody of what happens if immigration goes unchecked. What are your views on it personally?
On the film, Second Civil War?
On
immigration? Well, I am an immigrant. I came to this country in 1957 from a terrible hostile regime in Canada. But what's fascinating about this subject, and it's one of the things that's touched upon in the movie The Second Civil War, is that you cannot even discuss this subject without being considered a racist in this country. And the immigration policy in the United States is the most liberal in the world. 800,000 people a year enter the United States legally, 900,000, and maybe another 200,000 or 300,000 illegally. And no other country tolerates that kind of illegal immigration or that kind of mass influx through their borders. But it's only going to heat up because we're not discussing it. Do you know that in the next 5 years, over $1 billion a year in entitlements is going to be given through Social Security to foreigners who have immigrated to this country and not put so much as a dime into the system? Ouch. Yeah, ouch.
It's going to cause a fucking riot, Phil.
Well, that's why I'm here today to talk about the new American Nazi Party. We're not just against gypsies and homosexuals anymore.
Ask, are there countries, I mean, can I walk
Obviously
into
joking.
like Saddam Husseinville and just start setting up a discotheque or what? I mean,
not a chance. No other country. In Japan, they have a saying, which means, no, that means you don't set foot in my country, white devil, unless you buy a 50-inch television set. No, we're nutcases over here. We really are. As I said, you want to get pissed off? How's this for a law? A pregnant woman who sneaks into the United States and has a baby in this country, that child is automatically a U.S. citizen. How do you feel about that? Has all the entitlements that you have as a lifelong taxpayer. You know, that's no other country in the world has a policy like that.
Right.
Then there's what they call chain immigration, where when a family comes here from a foreign country, then they start bringing in grandma and grandpa and brother and sister, and they all go
I know how
on
that
Social
works.
Security. You know what it is, Dennis? The United States, as much as anything, the government of this country is a corporation that oversees a multiplicity of other corporations. And immigration, illegal and otherwise, is good for business. That's why it isn't stopped, in my opinion.
So back in 1997, SNL...
Because it's profitable. That's why it's not stopped. Because there's multinational corporations, deep state shadow elite types that have been, again, this has been by design, the Hegelian dialectic. It's all for money. This, oh my God, this was disgusting. Okay, so Royal Canadian Air Force. So this is what came out of the mouth of a Major Tristan Armstrong. And I was like, oh my God, this can't be friggin' true. And then I did some research. Okay, so based on reports from March 2026, there have been significant allegations regarding Tristan Armstrong, a communications engineering officer with the Royal Canadian Air Force. A visual investigation by CBC News identified Armstrong as being linked to an account on a white supremacist dating site called White Date. White supremacist. If there's like Black Date or Asian Date, is that like, are those black supremacist sites? And anyway, while the primary focus of the reporting centers on his alleged involvement with this platform and white supremacist ideology, the investigation into his online activity revealed several disturbing details, and it's not wrong. I do hate the fact, though, that again, all anything that's being investigated, it's all regarding right wing, white supremacist organizations, terrorist organizations, not at all regarding Antifa, the Muslim Brotherhood, IRCG, et cetera, far leftist, the BLM crowd, the Free Palestine. There are literal radical terrorists within these organizations and more, by the way, and violent, and it's not, and they're not getting investigated. The attention is not going where it should be focused. But again, this is good reporting, nonetheless. So this is from this guy. The moment a girl has her first period, she is at her peak marriageability. If you've ever designated laws for the ethno-state, let that be one policy we cleave to. Wasting women's peak fertility window on education is a disaster for birth rates. I'm so disgusted by that. Okay, and I said here too. So it's linked to Canada's future fighter capability because he was. Okay, so I don't think this sounds at all like white supremacy, like people are claiming, because this is practiced in many countries, and there is a reason Christian codified into law age limits to protect little girls, and we have laws against incest, etc. as well. There are laws against this stuff. So this guy is like, anyway, people need to find God. That guy needs to find fucking God. Sorry for swearing, but it's just so disgusting. And a military member, oh my God, dishonorable discharge, absolutely. Yeah, suicidal empathy. And the new leader. So Iran's new supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei's shell company linked to Penthouse in Toronto, Four Seasons private residence that sold for $10.5 million. The same web of shell companies and intermediaries used across his international portfolio. Let's see if there's anything else here. So I looked into him as well. And just from Gemini. And we might be looking at the same old. Getting people in to make the elitists richer. Okay, so key details of the financial network. The Toronto Link reports from Bloomberg and the Financial Times in early March 2026 explicitly list a penthouse at the Four Seasons private residence in Toronto as part of an investment network linked to Mujtaba Khamenei. This property was reportedly sold in 2020 through shell companies and intermediaries, which I've been talking about for years. The investigation highlights a sophisticated web of firms designed to bypass international sanctions. Assets are rarely in his name. Instead, they are registered to intermediaries, most notably the sanctioned Iranian businessman Ali Ansari. Portfolio International. Beyond Toronto, the network reportedly includes London. That's a lot of money, £100 million in real estate, including 2 luxury apartments in Kensington near the Israeli embassy, and multiple mansions on Billionaires Row, the Bishops Avenue, Germany, the 5-star Hilton Frankfurt Gravenbruch, Spain and Austria, high-end hotels and a golf resort in Mallorca, Dubai, luxury villas and exclusive neighborhoods. Can't make this shit up. Anyway, Ali Ansari is identified as the primary financial operator or conduit for these transactions. His companies such as Birch Ventures Limited, based in the Isle of Man, and Smart Global have been used to move billions of dollars, largely derived from Iranian oil sales, into Western real estate and hospitality markets. Cool. The revelation of this wealth has caused significant controversy within Iran as the country faces severe economic hardship and ongoing conflict. The Assembly of Experts appointed Mujtaba on March 8, 2026, amid reports of intense pressure from the IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, to ensure continuity of the regime's power and its vast economic interests. Shell Company, Birch Limited, Ziba Leisure Limited, registered in Navi. This offshore firm was reportedly used to funnel funds derived from Iranian oil sales into Western real estate. Yeah. Real estate friggin' companies. I keep saying, especially Canada, so corrupt right now. And the Brookfield connection with that as well, with real estate. The Ansari connection, most of these properties are registered under the name of Ali Ansari. I already said that. Construction magnate and former banker, another banker. Investigations characterize Ansari as the financial operator for the Khamenei family, using his own business empire, including Hyundai Bank, as a front to bypass international sanctions. 400 million pounds international asset networks, Toronto. Wow. Oh, sorry, complete. It's a lot. The discovery of these Canadian assets has led to increased pressure on the Canadian government to freeze properties linked to the Iranian leadership. No shit. No shit. In March 2026, members of the Assembly of Experts in Tehran have not officially commented on the property reports, though the IRGC-affiliated media has dismissed the investigations as Western propaganda aimed at destabilizing the new leadership. Anyway. I didn't mention, Eric Dubé just posted another really interesting video. And it is called The Most Ancient Flat Earth Scriptures. And it's only 10 minutes long, and I would love to friggin' share it. But again, he just posted it, so I just want people to go on his page. I'm not paid to say that. And look at his posts. His video is so good. So good. Again, it's just, even if you don't believe in that stuff, it's just like a really interesting, different perspective. Okay. I'm going to get into some Bill Donahue. I don't really like the title of it, but whatever. Is the God of the Old Testament Satan, Bill Donahue Enhanced, parts 1 and 2.
Moving away from that, over the past several weeks, we've directed our search, looking for logical explanations and understanding, and we followed two distinct paths. One path, we looked at the origin of the writings that we study, that we call the Bible, that we call mythology. And we're trying at the same time to find a connection between those who may have authored these ancient writings, who wrote these things. And remember the number 4555. And being very engrossed in that number, since it came out of the Coptic school, which was the Greek schools in Egypt, the fact that so many brilliant minds assembled together at a time when there was not a great deal of brilliance running loose on the planet Earth, all of it seemed to come together with these strange people, Diogenes, Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, Pythagoras, and all of these, Democritus, and all of these people together just all of a sudden appeared and started providing the world with a foundation for civilization and science and medicine. And, it was very strange to me. And then, of course, finding out that they wrote the Bible, and they did. They wrote the Bible. And even in the Old Testament, their influence is so strong because of the Jews that were in Egypt at the time who were writing this thing. Most of them were in the Hellenistic part, which was the Greek part as well. So their influence in the Bible, in the medical dictionaries, most of the words are Greek or Latin or whatever. And
mistranslations, like different words being used, like it's just, he's not wrong in that. The different translations have been, again, corrupted by people by design, which is kind of frustrating, but we still go to the basic fundamentals that were taught in the times of Jesus Christ and the disciples and apostles and monks, etc., that came after. The real true teachings of God in the Bible. And that's where, again, it's a lot better.
Who were they? And then the find that they gave us this number 4555 led me to say, well, we can maybe consider the possibility that the people who we call the classic Greek minds, these brilliant minds, were possibly from 4555. They instructed us well. They provided us with the basis of our civilization in mathematics, science, astronomy, philosophy, etc. And who taught them? There was nobody here to teach them. The second part of our search that we went through over the past few weeks was to find if we could find a logical explanation for how prayer and meditation work. Was there a logic involved in that? And then we found an amazing fact that when an electron or a photon or an atom is observed, its wave function as it travels through the universe collapses down to a particle just by observing it. We found that that's what goes on in laboratories, that the scientists will send out a photon that moves in a wave function, but as soon as somebody observes it, bang, it reduces itself to a particle, and that particle then finds its way to where it's supposed to go. And of course, we use the words of great physicists and scientists and saying, of course, inside of the human body, you are all made up of photons, electrons, atoms, and so then the same thing occurs. So then when you pray, when you either turn within yourself and pray or you turn within yourself in meditation, you're actually making something powerful and scientific occur, and that is the wave function inside of you collapses to a particle when you watch, when you meditate. So the power of prayer and the power of meditation becomes self-evident, scientifically provable, that observation that you make inside of yourself causes something to occur. We went into a lot of depth about the workings of these things, that they can be pushed forward. As you can send energy to another person or prayer to another person, they can be pulled as you receive that energy from God. And so, this was a very, very significant consideration. We had two things that I think were significant. Number one, to identify those who wrote the ancient words. And number two, to show scientific proof of the results that can occur by human participation in the subatomic world. And I mean human participation in the subatomic world by observation, by meditating, by watching. As Jesus said in the Bible, what I say to you, I say to all, watch. And so those were the two very, very powerful things. That's the end of that one. The subatomic world of photons and electrons and so forth that are inside of us, and their connection to prayer and meditation. It was an extremely significant thing that we were able to put together. Now, those two things we were able to do. That's what we've been doing over the past several weeks. And I think if you can scientifically improve how prayer or meditation works, scientifically prove it, with not using any Bibles, not using any religious people, not using any New Age stuff, but prove it through science. That's a significant accomplishment, and I think that's what we've been able to do. And we have the benefit of people like Stephen Hawking and renowned scientists of the world who say, indeed, inside of us are the same things that are in laboratories, and so the same thing would have to happen if someone observed inside of us as happens in a laboratory. You change the context of that electron. I wanted to pause for a moment, though, and just change the subject. After we've just reviewed that's what we've been doing, and try to clarify some things. I received an email from a person who was concerned because he had heard or had studied that Jesus was the representative of the fish and was actually the representative of the age of Pisces. And yet it was Jesus who pointed to the man with the pitcher of water, symbolically seeming to say, look for the man with the pitcher of water for the Passover, and which would then seem to indicate Pisces was pointing to Aquarius. But the question was, how could we say Jesus was Pisces pointing to the coming of Aquarius when Aquarius comes before Pisces? Pisces is the last sign. So he would have had to have been pointing to Pisces. So this was a question. But all questions are very interesting, and all questions are relevant. It's like Dieter asked a question, and I haven't seen him a couple of weeks because he's been away on business. And what was that question that you asked about? I'm drawing a blank. You drawing a blank on it too? Okay. Well, it was a very good question, and I drew a blank. But I brought in the documentation, the scientific documentation, to show you, and I'll think of it later when I don't have to. So we'll get to that. But let's look in the traditional astrological charts that we use, traditional astrology, Pisces does follow Aquarius. Aquarius is the 11th sign. Pisces is the 12th sign. And, the traditional astrological signs move from Aries. It starts at Aries and goes around and through Pisces, back to Aries again. But when you search through the various ages, then you're into something different. You're not into the month-by-month type of what sign does the sun appear to be in. You're into what's called the precession of the equinoxes. It's a different thing. So you have two things here. You have the monthly thing in which the sun goes through each of the 12 signs. And then you have the ages, which is connected and called the precession of the equinoxes. And it's a different thing, say. So there are two forms that we have to consider. The apparent movement of the sun through the 12 houses, in which case Aquarius is before Pisces. Okay? So in other words, you get to Aquarius, now the next month is going to be Pisces. But then you have the other thing, the precession of the equinoxes, which we will look at in a minute. But in that event, Pisces comes before Aquarius. We have left the age of Pisces, and we're entering the age of Aquarius. So indeed, Jesus did represent the fish and the end of the age of Pisces, and did point to the man with the pitcher of water, and then clarify that, saying the coming of the age of Aquarius.
That's what it was about Pluto.
What is it?
Peter's question was about Pluto. How could it be applied?
That's right. That's right. You asked about Pluto and Hades. Just real quick, and I'll get to the information. But Hades in the ancient Greek was also known as the god Pluto or Pluton. Okay, and then when they discovered that planet, that was the most distant planet, they called it Pluto in 1930. In 1978, another guy came along, discovered the satellite around it, and called it Charon, which fulfilled what was in the Greek ancient myth. But I'm going to have that for you. But that was a good question. Okay. Now, traditional astrology, as I said, starts at Aries and goes around through Pisces, which is the final sign. But the ways of the ancients moved in different patterns. And this is what a lot of people who work in astrology have to be cognizant of when they get into biblical things, and when you get into start talking about the ancient Greeks and the Egyptians and so forth and so on. The pattern that is found in the ancient documents always begins at the Virgin and ends at the lion. It never starts at the ram and ends at the fish. It starts at the Virgin and ends at the lion. And that is the riddle of the Sphinx. And that means virgin consciousness, purity, and then fulfillment, Christ consciousness, Crystal consciousness, lion consciousness. The word Sphinx means to bind closely together. And obviously was to show how the great heavenly circle came together, which the Sphinx was the head of the woman and the body of the lion. In the temple, you might want to, if you're interested in looking at things, but there is a temple in Egypt called Esneh, E-S-N-E-H. The signs of the lion Leo and the Virgin Virgo are displayed on a wall. There's one here and there's one there. In between the two of them is the Sphinx, carved into the wall. This is thousands of years ago. So in all astrological positioning attached to the Bible and to the ancient Greeks and Egyptians, the movement is from divine mind or virgin mind in meditation to Christ consciousness. So it's from Virgo to the line. And so then you follow the apparent trajectory of the sun, which is, of course, the movement of the earth, through the signs, and what do you see? You see what we've talked about for so long here. September, which is the month of the Virgin, there's the birth of the sun, Virgo, born between the horse and the goat, between Sagittarius and Capricorn, thus in a stable. Of course, that's where the horse and the goat are. And then November and December, then crucified on the crux or the cross, which is the Southern Cross, on December 21st, which is the shortest day of the year. Then 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb of the winter solstice, which is December 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. And then reborn traditionally at the end of the solstice on December the 25th. Then 30 years after his birth, Jesus steps into the water with the waterman John. And 30 days after December 25th, the sun enters the sign of the waterman Aquarius. Now you have in that movement that this lady in the email was questioning, the sun then moves into Pisces, and then Jesus leaves the water and selects his disciples from among the fishermen, which is the fish Pisces. The sun then moves into Aries, which is the ram or the Lamb of God, which takes away the winter and brings us the spring. Jesus becomes the Lamb of God that takes away the sins of the world. Finally, Jesus rises to sit at the right hand of the Father. The sun in the northern hemisphere celestially right ascends. That's the way it goes. It goes up and to the right in the northern hemisphere to the eastern sky. And on June 21st, sits at the right side. And there is more sunlight on that day than any other day. And then Christ ends his ministry in the book of Revelation as the Lion of Judah. And this trajectory of the sun ends in the sign of the lion, Leo, in August. And that's the way that works. So you have the 12 months and the apparent movement of the sun through each of the signs duplicated in the Bible by the story of the life of Jesus. He becomes, obviously, the sun god. Okay? So in that particular point on page 859 of your Bible, you'll see the point in which is raised about Aquarius, because here is, wherever Jesus went, he was portrayed as the sign of the fish, Pisces. In fact, they would make, oh God, how do you do this? I'm not good at drawing things, but, oh, that's not bad. There's a fish. But they would make a sign and they would write words in there. And he was the fish, and so he was the age of Pisces. Now, as we've just said here, the situation has Aquarius coming 30 days after December, after Capricorn, and then Pisces coming after. So, but yet here we have the situation on page 859 of the Bible. And Luke 22:10, in which they asked Jesus, when will there be the Passover? And he says, well, when you enter into the city, you'll meet a man bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him into the house, and he'll show you a large upper room furnished, which is the right hemisphere of the brain. So in that particular point, then, the man with the pitcher of water is Aquarius. So what we're talking there is the Passover from the winter to the spring, but in a whole different way than what takes place in the normal 12-month arrangement where we have, moving into Aries to the springtime. So in this scenario, then, Jesus is the sun, the 12 disciples are the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 months. Judas is Scorpio or Saturn. He represents the mind that can imprison the spirit and causes the deadening effects on the spirit. And so by the movement of the earth, the sun appears to move into the 12 signs, and the Bible follows the story of Jesus to the letter astrologically. The Bible and the story of Jesus is actually a month-by-month movement in astrology of the apparent movement of the sun. So then if Jesus is the sun moving from Aquarius to Pisces, from John the waterman to select his disciples from the fishermen, how can Jesus then be Pisces the fish pointing to the waterman, because the waterman has already come? Let's look at that again. Here he is. He says he steps into the water of the waterman, John the Baptist. That's Aquarius. Now here he is, and he's moving to select his disciples from the fishermen. That's Pisces. Aquarius comes first. Pisces comes after Aquarius. So then how could he possibly be Pisces saying, here comes Aquarius? That would have it backwards. The current age that we are in now, which is moving into the age of Aquarius, is dependent on the following. And this is what you have to understand to make this clear. When the vernal equinox takes place, that is the commencement of spring. This is the way this is figured. When the vernal equinox takes place, when spring comes, when the sun crosses the equator, and it happens around March or April, in that time, one then projects against the backdrop of the traditionally, scientifically, anciently defined constellations. Prior to 60 BC or so, the projection of every spring looking up, at the ecliptic would project to Pisces. Okay? Then during the time of Christ, that Pisces projection or equinox, in other words, every month during the spring, during the time of Pisces, when you would look up for 2,000 years or so, it would be up towards that constellation, Pisces. So where the sun is at the first moment of spring depends on the age. And where the sun is now is in Pisces entering into Aquarius. Okay? So it's a different thing. It's not a question of where the sun is month by month by month as, it appears to be in the traditional chart. It is, where is it as you look up in the northern hemisphere against the backdrop of the signs, where is it at the spring? And every spring for 2,160 years, when you would look up, it would be at Pisces. Yes?
Yeah. Just to put it in a slightly different way, in the first part, the Earth is rotating.
Right.
Then the sun rotates.
Okay.
So the Earth travels this way while the sun is worked way out.
Okay.
Turning
good.
That way.
That's a good
it's the
point.
Same thing.
Yeah, but it's a good point, and it helps to explain it. It helps to explain the difference there. So that's very good. Now, but let's look at something for a minute. If you were in Australia and you do the same thing the first day of spring, you could say we're in the age of Virgo. It depends on where you are. It depends on where this projection at the first day of spring is coming from. The point being, what makes it non-local is that the ancient projections were based on the position of the sun and the equinox from the northern hemisphere, because everything was based on the northern hemisphere, because the north is the mind. The north is the consciousness. So everything was based around the north. Thus, since Virgo and Leo are not in the position presently in the north, Aquarius is, it is the age of Aquarius and not the age of Virgo or Leo. That's how this. So there's two completely different things. And as Albert made it clear, the sun goes one way, the earth goes another way. Traveling through the sun monthly is the traditional thing of Aquarius and then Pisces. But when you get to the traveling of the earth or the sun in a different direction, as Albert was telling us, in the vernal equinox, then you are going to have Pisces coming before Aquarius. So Jesus is saying, I'll be with you to the end of the age. He's talking to the end of the age of Pisces. And then he points, behold, when you see the man with the pitcher of water, you'll have the Passover. He's talking of Aquarius. So we have two completely different types of things that are the operation of the stars and the planets. Okay? So that's two ways to read that theory. So we have both sides of Pisces Aquarius theme. Behold the man with the pitcher of water, and after the Aquarian, the return of the fisherman Christ. There are some people and I've seen them on the internet, who feel we are still a ways from Aquarius. I've read one fellow who thinks we're about 400 years away from Aquarius. But I think it's so difficult to measure these types of things, you know. The stars and these constellations are kind of drawn, and, you know, they don't really look like, you know, lions or goats or anything like that. But I think that one has to do more than simply measure where the sun or where the earth may be. I think you have to consider the nature of the human mind. And why I think most people feel that definitely we have moved into Aquarius are because of the inventions: electricity, the phone, airplanes, television, space travel, computers, satellites, and all of these things are related to Aquarius, and Pisces are related to religion. See? And though they're still making a cry, I mean, religion really is fading fast, and it's just betraying itself as such an impotent type of force in the world. And this is glaring evidence that Aquarius is upon us. Robert Hand considered Pisces as 221 AD, which would bring the full cusp of Aquarius at 2060. Very interesting. That's not that far away, you know. However, it does appear by the events of change and upheaval in science that we're much closer than that. Whatever. Hopefully you understand the difference and how we reach that difference. I wanted to make mention of something else. We talked about, and I always take a certain amount of, not pride, but I always, you know, it's very important to me that, you know, something come along that kind of prove to you that what you're listening in here, when you come into this room, that what you're hearing is true, to the best of my ability, and because I have to trust science and so forth and so on. But I wanted to make mention that we have been talking for weeks about this, the electrons and how electrons change when you look at them, and so the wave function collapse and they become part of the particle function and meditation and prayer. And what's so interesting is that they just awarded the Nobel Prize for Physics. Just 1998 Nobel Prize for Physics. And I'm particularly appreciative of that award, since it comes right to the point that we've been sharing here over the past few weeks. What other church, name me one other church who has been discussing as the realm of God the very things that have resulted in the Nobel Prize being awarded for physics? I'd say we're the only one in the world. But we've been talking about the very thing here that has resulted in the Nobel Prize. The 1998 Nobel Prize for Physics went to Robert Laughlin of Stanford University in California, Horst Stormer of Columbia University in New York, and Daniel Tsui of Princeton University in Princeton, New Jersey. They received the discovery for showing how electrons can change behavior and act more like fluid than particle. Exactly what we've been talking about here. And I think that's extremely significant. We didn't teach this before or after they received the prize. We've been teaching this for weeks, and now the Nobel Prize for Physics is awarded on exactly the subject that's been being taught. So that's significant. And it's just great, because it should at least encourage you that when you sit here, what you're hearing is scientifically accurate and true, and now here you have this Nobel Prize, you see. And the thing here that is so critical as to what they found, and what you have to understand, is that the change happens when you observe. When you look inside of yourself, even though you don't know it, as soon as you do it, you collapse the wave energy inside of yourself to a particle. There are messages that have come down from the universe that are destined for you, and you've never gotten them because they've gone right over your head, because they're going like a wave in the ocean, and they'll never come to you until you watch, until you look, and until that wave energy collapses to a particle so it can find its way through the pineal gland of your brain. And the change involves the subatomic. And all of the things that you've ever heard when you went to church as a child about the Spirit is actually the subatomic. The Spirit is actually the subatomic. Electrons and photons. And these things know where they're going. There are messages that are sent from God to you that know exactly where you are. And yet they have to travel in space as waves over and over and over again until you come to the point where you watch and collapse the wave so then that particle can find its way to the blackboard of your heart and write the message for you. The movement from wave to particle and particle to wave. So we can enjoy the fact that we here were studying a similar activity related to God when these three scientists were rewarded and awarded the Nobel Prize. Now I want to share with you something a little different. And this is something that, you just might want to really think of this. Because it's a whole different approach. And when I found this, I said, it makes such sense to me. I want to teach you about a Persian prophet whose name was Mani, M-A-N-I. He was from Persia. He was a contemporary of Platonius, who was a Greek scholar. But what Mani tried to do, and I think he's done it, he tried to address the question that if God is so good and so loving and so caring, why is the world filled with such hate and such violence? What went wrong? How could this be? Jesus loves the little children. God is good. God is love. Our Heavenly Father loves you. And yet all of these horrible things. If you have enough money and, you got a good job and you got, intelligence and you can compete in the world, you can really have a good time. But what if you don't? Where's God? The basis of the story seems to go hand in hand with this Nobel Prize that we just discussed because it provides an insight that light carries a power which transcends its physical strength. In other words, there's something in this power of light. But anyhow, for Mani, God is light. And this is carried out in the Bible when Jesus says, practice the single eye and your body will fill with light. But Mani felt that God was light and lived in light, but not far away there was another source, and that source was darkness. Today there is light. Tonight there'll be darkness. Today it's nice and calm. Another day there'll be darkness and storms. In other words, it's part of the same whole. And encompassing the myth of light versus darkness, Mani made the point that God lives in the light and Satan lives in the darkness. Not saying they're necessarily people, but trying to break down what we live in and why the experience that we have is like it is and why everything can get so screwed up. Mani said God commands 5 powers: intelligence, knowledge, thought, deliberation, and resolution. Let me repeat that. Intelligence, knowledge, thought, deliberation, and resolution. And Mani said God commands those powers, and Satan commands 5 powers, which are smoke, fire, wind, water, and darkness. Smoke, fire, wind, water, and darkness sometimes fought with one another. And they would really rage. And you see that sometimes, You can have the wind and the water and they're, screaming and roaring and so forth and so on. But one day as they were struggling in a storm, they looked over and they saw from their dark mass in the distance this kingdom of light. Look, what is that? And all the darkness looked at this light and said, wow, that looks nice. We should have a part in that. We want to be a part of that. So Mani says they wanted to go there. They wanted to have the light. So under Satan, the powers of darkness, smoke, wind, fire, and water, and dark decided to capture the light and to subdue it. So now Mani makes a very, very interesting point. Mani said, God is no match for the powers of darkness. Mani said, look at God's powers. God is contemplative. God is meditative. God is prayerful. God is quiet. I am on my knees and my hands are folded. Don't make any noise. See? But Satan is full of this furious energy. Boom! Bang! What is going on? Screaming, yelling, fighting, all kinds of things. And yet everyone, God is peace. God is love. God is... And Mani said that God is so meditative, so prayerful, so beautiful, so healing, that God simply cannot fight back. He's passive in the face of evil. He's too innocent. He's too peaceful. He's too loving. And evil rages all over the place. Because I never tell you. If you've got a problem in your life and something's going wrong and all hell's breaking loose, what do I say to you? Well, just pray. Just be quiet. Just trust God. And what's he doing? He's a wimp. He can't do nothing. And yet Satan is throwing everything at you. There's knives flying on one side of your head and the other side of your head. So God ponders, what am I going to do? All hell's breaking loose down there. So God creates a being known as the mother of life, which you know is traditionally as the Holy Spirit. She gives birth to what is known as first man. Not a physical, but a spiritual man. And first man gathers his own spiritual powers, not the physical smoke, wind, fire that's going on down in the earth, but the spiritual powers of light, gentle breeze, clear, crisp wind.
I don't really, again, I love Bill Donahue, so I'm not saying anything against that. I think he's very interesting. So this is just a simple Google search, or ChatGPT search that I did for a query. And so, what does God teach in the Christian Bible about harming children or the more vulnerable? And so God's teaching in the Christian Bible is very strong on this. The vulnerable are to be protected, not exploited, and harming children or the weak brings severe judgment. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure I was off mute. God identifies with the vulnerable, commands their protection, condemns those who exploit them, and warns that harming children is a grave offense. And how many children have died in Palestine, in Iran, and anyway, other areas as well? Many. A clear summary is, okay, so we said that. God commands protection of the vulnerable. The Bible repeatedly names children, widows, orphans, the poor, strangers, the weak, as people who must be defended. Isaiah 1:17, learn to do well, seek judgment, relieve the oppressed, judge the fatherless, plead for the widow. Psalm 82:3-4, defend the poor and fatherless, do justice to the afflicted and needy, deliver the poor and needy, rid them out of the hand of the wicked. Right? The Faucis, my God, Bill Gates, like these people, Carney. Deuteronomy 10:18, he doth execute the judgment of the fatherless and widow and loveth the stranger. That's why even like for child support and things like that, where do you think that comes from in the laws? This is Christian religion codified into law. Harming children brings especially severe warning. Jesus gives one of the strongest warnings in the New Testament about harming children. Matthew 18:6, whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck and that he were drowned in the depth of the sea. Also Mark 9:42, whosoever shall offend one of these little ones that believe in me, it is better for him that a millstone were hanged. Okay, I already said that. The phrase offend here means that more than merely annoy. It means to cause harm, lead into sin, corrupt, or spiritually damage. So even when we're talking about like not teaching the foundations of the principles of Christianity, if children are getting are suffering abuse or trauma, also like even with that, it makes it even harder for them through childhood and through adulthood as well because of that. And there could be generational trauma being passed on because of that. And again, not good for society if people are criminals, if they're corrupt, and it's because of things that they suffered because of in childhood that were not healed, or there was no one in their environment that was able to give them those guiding principles. So the phrase of, okay, so Jesus is harming children, corrupting children, abusing trust with children. So even with like what we're doing with the body mutilation stuff on children, that, no, there should be laws against that. The tide is turning though. Okay, so children are not burdens, they are blessings. So even child slavery, child soldiers, etc. There's so many different missionaries around the world that have, you know, spread light on this and codified into laws in Canada and in the Western world. But again, look where this comes from. Okay, so the Bible does not treat children as disposable. Psalm 127:3. Lo, children are an heritage, or a heritage rather, of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. Matthew 19:14. Suffer little children and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. Jesus does not push children aside as unimportant. He brings them near and uses them as examples of humility and kingdom belonging. Exodus 22:22 through 24. Ye shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child. If thou afflict them in any wise, or in any way, my wrath shall wax hot. So all the exploitation that's being done to like, so many people in Canada, that's a sin. Zechariah 7:10. Oppress not the widow, not the fatherless, the stranger, nor the poor. So that's why even the right for people to have religious freedom within Canada, even though, you know, it is a Christian country, you know, culturally in most areas, again, respect people that want to practice their own faith, but not at the detriment of the people within, right? Not at their expense. If they're going to be exploited, harmed, oppressed, raped, murdered, etc., no, that is doing a disservice. Zechariah 7:10, oppress not the widow. Okay, so Proverbs 31:8-9, open thy mouth for the dumb, in the cause of all such as are appointed to destruction, defend the rights of the poor and needy. So not only is harming the vulnerable condemned, but God commands others to speak up for them. And so again, I don't like doing this stuff, but I feel like I'm kind of like obligated to, especially like regarding like the defending the like the poor and needy. These MAID programs in Canada, it's absolutely disgusting. And again, the organ harvesting donations that are going on with that as well. Like again, this is being exploited, and it's friggin' gone through the roof in the last couple of years, and the more authorization. So there were some that actually had type 1 diabetes, which is reversible, by the way, let me be clear, and seasonal depression. And he was mated. He was killed. He was murdered. And it's absolutely, and I keep on saying this, even myself, because I do have a chronic back condition because of service and a shoulder condition, which I'll always have. And sometimes it's really bad. And I'm like laid up for like days and weeks. Like it can be really painful. And I also have complex PTSD. So I could literally get MAID approved within immediately. And this is something that is just absolutely appalling to me. And there are people, again, Christians that were calling out euthanasia programs and things like that, like in Nazi friggin' Germany and in Europe during friggin' World War II, and even before that and after that, saying that you can't do this to human beings, like the most vulnerable populations, choosing who is like, again, lesser than. And it often had to do a lot to do with the class of person, right? Like if you were poor or not, suffered the most. Unbelievable. True religion includes care for the vulnerable. The New Testament makes this very plain. James 1:27. Okay, so pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this: to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction. Okay, so care for the exposed and defenseless as well. That's why with military service, you get a lot of Christians and conservatives, or at least you used to. It's like, even in the military now, there's a lot more atheists. And again, it's people's misinterpretation of the Bible and all the atrocities they see around the world, right? It's made them very jaded. The Bible teaches that injustice towards the weak is not a minor flaw. It is evidence of corruption. Ezekiel 22:29, the people of the land have used oppression and exercised robbery and have vexed the poor and needy. Micah 6:8, What doth the Lord require of thee but to do justly and to love mercy? Matthew 25:40, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, we have done it unto me. This means how a society treats the vulnerable is how it is treating God's image in them. Harming the weak is also a spiritual crime. The vulnerable bear God's image. Power is meant for service, not predation. God hears the cry of the oppressed. Proverbs 14:31, he that oppresseth the poor reproacheth his maker. This is very strong. To oppress the weak is to insult the God who made them. So God teaches, protect them, do justice for them, do not exploit them, do not corrupt them, speak up for them. God will judge those who harm them. And so do not corrupt them. That's even with academia, with propaganda media, with our elected officials who are outright lying to us, even about the reality of the world, and corrupting the minds. Like, it's the worst thing that people can possibly freaking do. Anyways, more on to Rob Donahue.
Shining light, cool water, bright fire. And man has the elements of first man and God are all set. They're from above. They have no parts of the earth below. And all of these elements come within first man, and they create what is called a soul. That's what Monty says. And God sends them down to save the earth. And here comes first man. But immediately first man is consumed by the powers of darkness on the earth. And he's destroyed and thrown into the deepest pit, and God stands up there. What happened? What happened? And this describes the feeling that all of us get when you try to overcome the negative aspects of life. And though you fight and fight and fight, you just suddenly find yourself seemingly totally destroyed. It's like these people in Wyoming. They have this beautiful son, and then he is just butchered by, how could this be? But anyhow, with the aid of the five powers, God finally succeeds in getting man out of the pit, says Mani. But it's not a real victory for God. You know what happens to all of us? Even if we turn things around, even if we feel better about ourselves, for some of the light in first man was taken away and replaced by dark matter. You know, there's always scars from any difficult thing that you go through. So now begins a long time of interaction between God and man and Satan. And what is the whole interaction? It is man's attempt to recover the light that was lost in his encounter with the darkness of the earth. And that's where we're all at now. That's why you're sitting here now. And that's why you meditate. That's why we discuss the functions of light and the angles of light. Our light that entered the fetus at conception has been severely darkened by the system. You came into your mother's womb as a beautiful angle of light from God, pure, holy. And as soon as you got out of your mother's womb and became a human being, it was all destroyed. It was all taken away from you. Your name is this. Your nationality is this. Your religion is this. You'll go to school here. You'll speak this way. You shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. You must do this. You must do all these other things. And so everything that was of the pure above is gone. And so now you're trying to enter within yourself and recover that light.
It doesn't have to be gone.
So God, after the creation, places first man to live in the sun, which means the mind. And this is Jesus, God's only son, the light of the world, the mind. And mother of life lives in the moon, which is the emotions. And the cosmos is set in motion around the earth, and the constellations of the zodiac serves kind of like spaceships that deliver light to the sun and to the moon and to the earth, and all of these things are going on. So, and here's Mani talking about the zodiac providing light to the mind through the sun and the emotions to the moon. Now the amazing part of the story, which I think Mani outdid himself. A concept that you should ponder very seriously. Satan now makes his move in this battle with God. He must protect his kingdom of darkness. So he makes a man. And he calls the man Adam. Who created Adam? Mani says, Satan, the god of darkness. because he feels that Adam will be able to store and hold on to the degree of light that Satan has stolen from God. He makes Adam a sexual being. And so since he's made Adam a sexual being, he wants to make sure that he has some way he can control Adam, so he makes Eve.
I don't think that's the way it is in the Bible. I'm just kidding.
So now he can control Adam through his desires, because he can always keep Adam in line by threatening to take Eve away. Eve and Adam's desires will not allow this to happen, so he will have to do the bidding of God, who Mani says is not the God you've always been praying to.
It's not even
or maybe it is the God
bidding
you've
of
always
God.
been praying to. So then Satan moves to totally over.
Life is. My mother hates it when I say it's a video game or simulation. I don't know how to explain it, but we are being tested on Earth, and this is throughout history, ancient civilizations to now. There's various different ways that people have put in place codes or rules within societies, within their communities, and ultimately the ones that are successful are the ones that are closer to what God intended us to live like. And when we deviate from that path is when there seems to be individual decline and ultimately societal decline, because the individual makes up the collective, just like the particle creates the wave.
Run the world. He instructs Adam and Eve, I want you to go forth and multiply. And then I will be all over the place.
Excuse me.
I will be all, because my spirit of darkness will be in every person all over. And if God of light wants to change this, he'll have to come to each person individually. But Mani said, if God can get to Adam and Eve before this thing goes too far, he can stop it. Eve is alone in the garden. And God, the Heavenly Father, the one of peace, love, compassion, comes and appears as a serpent, as a snake, and says to Eve, Eve, you've got to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And you've got to get Adam to eat as well. Otherwise, there's no thing I can.
Well, we need to have wisdom. That's also the lesson on Earth. And again, I keep on losing my train of thought with Adam and Eve.
But he told us not to eat.
Oh, yes. So you have good and evil. God representing like the good virtues, and then you've got the devil that represents the bad virtues, temptations and things like that. And what you feed into is how you perceive your reality and how you impact others, like the butterfly effect as well.
That tree.
God created this cosmos and everything inside of it, and ultimately the devil as well. And
because he doesn't want you to understand. But if you'll just eat of it, you'll understand. You'll be filled with light. You'll be filled with knowledge. Whoa. One thing Satan said they could have. They can have anything I've got. But the one thing I don't want you guys going near is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. I don't want you to know the truth. I don't want you to know what's going on. I don't want you to know who I am. And so Eve, as you know the story, goes to Adam. the coiled serpent that rises within each one of us and curls its way up the tree of life, which is the spine, and impacts the pineal gland of the brain, the human body, tells you she must get Adam to eat that fruit. It is the only way that we can be saved out of the snares of the evil one, and so that we understand that the God of the Old Testament is Satan. And Adam finally eats and is expelled from the Garden of Evil by Satan. So Monty says, now they've become like us. They know good and evil. I can't have that. I can't have these people being this way. And he casts them out. They know of life. They have knowledge of good. But now the struggle really gets deep and serious. So then Monty suggests something. Who is this God who kills Jesus, who is a symbol of good and peace and love and healing? Who is this God that must torture and have blood flowing to the ground? Who is this? And Monty suggests, who is this abominable God of the Old Testament who rules by fear and will not let anyone touch his fiery mountain lest they be killed? Who is this God who gives these kind of instructions? And when I look at this, if you have a Bible, if you would just turn to page 147 and look at Numbers chapter 31. And in Numbers chapter 31, verse 17, there's a very interesting thing. This is the instructions from God to Moses. And then think of Mani. Mani is saying this God who's given us instructions is the devil. And look what he says. Now therefore, kill every male among the little ones. Kill all the little boys. And kill every woman that has known a man by lying with him. But all the women children that have not known a man by lying with him, keep alive for yourselves. Who is this? And what is the answer that came from Mani? It did not deep and serious. So then Mani suggests something. Who is this God who kills Jesus, who is a symbol of good and peace and love and healing? Who is this God that must torture and have blood flowing to the ground? Who is this? And Mani suggests, who is this abominable God of the Old Testament who rules by fear and will not let anyone touch his fiery mountain lest they be killed? Who is this God who gives these kind of instructions? And when I look,
that's not Christianity. That's why the New Testament was developed. Christianity does take certain things out of Judaism and out of multiple other different religions that predate Judaism. Because again, there's a lot of recycling of different names of things and breakdowns and explanations of the creation story and the luminaries and things like that. But yeah, and so it's been updated in the New Testament.
Look at this. If you have a Bible, if you would just turn to page 147 and look at Numbers chapter 31. And in Numbers chapter 31, verse 17, there's a very interesting thing. This is the instructions from God to Moses. And then think of Mani. Mani is saying this God who's given us instructions is the devil. And look what he says. Now therefore, kill every male among the little ones. Kill all the little boys. And kill every woman that has known a man by lying with him. But all the women children that have not known a man by lying with him, keep alive for yourselves. Who is this? And what is the answer that came from Mani? It did not read.
It is Old Testament. Here, let me see here what Google has to say about that. Because yeah, that one's biblical context, Numbers 31:17 chapter. Anyway, so this refers to a controversial passage in the book of Numbers, specifically Numbers 31, 17, 18. But again, I'm going to reiterate, this is Old Testament. Look at the New Testament, what Jesus practiced, what he shared, etc., in his treatment of women, etc. It is not the same. The context and this is why, again, there's some religions that are incompatible for various reasons. After a battle with the Midianites, Moses commands the soldiers to kill all the male children and every woman who has slept with a man. The exception, the soldiers are commanded to keep alive for themselves the young girls, the virgins. Disgusting. Context, this was part of a divine command for vengeance against the Midianites for leading the Israelites into idolatry and sin at Peor. Interpretation is often cited as one of the most difficult, indefensible, or violent passages in the Bible. No shit. Interpreted by some as a command for war crimes, or specifically in verses 17, 18, the taking of virgin girls for sexual purposes. Others interpret it as a specific time-bound act of judgment intended to eliminate the source of spiritual corruption. And now it's getting into mathematical context. I don't know why. But anyways, completely updated in the New Testament within Christianity, to be clear. And again, reiterating, Jesus did warn of people like that. But yeah, crazy. Holy freaking wild.
Mani never required anyone to worship the fearful God of the Old Testament, whom Mani decided was Satan himself. Mani said that what is good in each of us is perfectly good and godly good. And this is interesting. Mani was a Persian prophet from thousands of... He taught that the part of us that sins is something for which we are not responsible. You live in this place. What do you have to do with it? You don't even know. It is not we that sin. We are only vessels that seek to preserve the light that is in us, in which the war goes on the outside. All of this horror that's going on. You say, well, Mani, he's being, what do you mean? He doesn't want to take responsibility for what he's doing. But look at the Bible. Look at page 924 of the Bible. And on page 924 in the book of Romans, in Romans chapter 8.
Old Testament.
It says, verse 7, and we'll be out of here in 2 minutes. Romans chapter 8, verse 7, it says, because the carnal mind is enmity against God. It is not subject to the law of God, neither can it be. What are you wasting your time trying to do good? What are you trying to do? It's not possible that your mind can do this. Because you're living inside of a foreign object. You're trying to recover the light back to humankind that was stolen by darkness. And yet here you are taking responsibility and all the feelings of guilt and all this for all this lunacy that goes on that you have nothing to do with. Look at this. Look at Romans chapter 7, right above it on the same page, verse 14. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal. For that which I do, I allow not. This is a guy that wrote the Bible. It's a preacher. He says, what I do, I tell other people not to do. It's like Jimmy Swaggart. Oh, you sinners! You're out with these floozies and you're going to hell. And then who knew he put his shower clogs and a bandana around his head and ran down to the motel at night? Who knew? Because why? Because he says, for that which I do, I allow not. I don't allow you to do what I do. But look at verse 15. For what I would, that's not what I do. In other words, the things that I know I should do, I don't do. But what I hate, that's what I do. But he loves it. He says he hates it, but he really loves it. That's why he does it all the time. What is it that he's doing? But this is the important part. This guy wrote the Bible. And after he got done writing the Bible, he went to the motel. Verse 16, if then I do that which I would not, in other words, if I'm doing the things that I know I shouldn't do, and yet I know that the law is good, then verse 17, then it's no more me that's doing it, but the sin that dwells in me that does it. That's the end of that. So don't blame me. I got to go to the hotel. She's waiting. But it's not me. Remember that. But that's what he's saying. See? But he is not somebody who's, out in the street. This is the guy who wrote the book. This is the same guy who said, abides faith, hope, and love. But after he got done saying that, he's off somewhere and he's having a good time. Saying, it's not me. Remember the guy on television? That devil made me do it. Not me. See? So, finally, what does Monty say we should do in this predicament? What are we going to do? There is no way out. You're inside of a body that's going to do whatever it wants to do, regardless of what happens. And your mother and your father and your sister and your brother and your counselor and all these people can say this, and you agree with everybody. You agree. Oh, hallelujah, this is right. Yes. Oh, I agree with you. Now, this is what I want you to do. Okay, yeah, I want to do that. Yes, I'm going to do that. Until you get by yourself. And when you get by yourself, you're going to do what you want to do. So this is what Monty says. We cannot fight the system, which Monty calls Satan. And it's true. What you've got to do, get this, is remain passive. We must be still. You've got to stay within. You've got to be at peace. And in doing that, you can be with the one who is peace, who is quiet, who is gentle. And this we do as we observe the light within us. As a watcher, we cause that light to change, to bring us the message, to bring us this power of light that comes from above. All the while, the turmoil continues on the outside, much of it called God, much of it called religion. And so we learn these things. I reach a conclusion. I'm sure that many of you have reached the same conclusion, that this earth, this world, there's nothing in the world you can do about it. Did you ever think that you would live to see the day when religious people would go to a church and picket and scream at people who were mourning somebody who had died? Yes, it's in the paper. I never thought I would see anything like that. So then it's over. It's beyond the point of saying I can do anything. And if I would look, here are people picketing outside of a church, screaming with placards at the people who were being buried in their all the mourning people, and claiming they're with God. But they are with God. But Monty told us which God they're with. It's the God of darkness. It's the God who says, yes, kill the little boys and take the little girls and have fun with them. Do whatever you want. It's that God.
Old Testament. To be clear.
But now you've learned here from Monty at least a possibility that what this book is talking about in a different way, in the realm of not Adam, A-T-O-M, but in the realm of personality, that there was the serpent is that energy that rises inside of you in meditation. That's the serpent that spoke to this thing called Eve. It said, you've got to eat this thing. You've got to understand. You've got to realize what you're getting involved in. But if you just stay the way you are and you don't realize that there's nothing anything can do to save you. And that is the most beautiful part of the story, because it's not something that happened in some primeval garden. It happens inside of every human being today. It is the serpent inside of you that speaks. It is the serpent, that energy that rises like helicon, the helix, the double helix of DNA that rises up the spine to impact the pineal gland. And it's saying to you, you've got to go up the tree, which is your body, and take of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which is your mind. You've got to do that, because once you then are able to understand these things, then you will be expelled from the garden. Do you know why you're sitting here? You're sitting here because you were expelled from the garden by the God of darkness. You're sitting here because you're no longer welcome by me. Why are you no longer welcome? Because you think. And you're not allowed to think. And that's this whole story. And I really find much credibility. And when I've always wondered, when I've ever read the Bible, and I've tried to say, this is God, and all of the preachers and teachers would tell me, you've got to love God, you've got to have faith. But the whole book I read about, if he wasn't killing kids and women, he's killing animals. He couldn't get enough of having blood sacrifices. He couldn't have enough animals in there to, bleeding all over the place. What the heck is this guy? And then the point where, don't come near my mountain. Anybody that touches my mountain is going to die. This is your heavenly Father. I don't want to, what is this guy? But now, could this possibly be? And could this possibly indeed be? Well, this was written, and you can look his name, it was written by a Persian prophet many, many years ago. who reaches this conclusion of what our life is and what our chances are. And you know yourself, everything that you try and everything that you've attempted to fight against, how do you overcome it? Because as soon as you succeed in putting down one thing that's come against you, there's another one. As soon as you climb one mountain, you get to the top of the mountain, you've overcome, and then what do you look and you see what's ahead of you? Another mountain. And that's all they are, one mountain range after the. And so what this Persian prophet of long ago said, you've got to be exactly the same as the true God. You've got to be passive. You've got to be meditative. You've got to be still. You've got to be quiet. You've got to stay within, because there is nothing else that you can do, because you can't win. You can't possibly fight it. You've got to eat from the tree of it. And many of you, as myself, have for years stood around, and I've listened to these bizarre experiences that people said they've had and what we should do and find it doesn't work. I've got to find a logical explanation. And so now we go into soaring again up to supernova 1987A, up to the movement of Pluto taking its place as the point of Hades in March 15th, 1999, and looking at the change. Let me tell you something else, and just think about this. What have we talked about here? We've said that we've proved, there's no question about this, that Pegasus is the hippocampus of the brain. The hippocampus of your brain is actually Pegasus. It is in contact with Pegasus, the white horse. And that's where all of the discoveries were made, okay? And what is it talking about? What did we say is going to be the big change that comes upon people in 99 and 92? It is the restoring of your memory. The restoring of your memory as to who you really are. And now what else is the big thing that's going on in industry all over? What is going to happen in Y2, what they call Y2K, year 2000, with the computers is memory. What's going to happen to the memory of the computers when all of a sudden they're faced with 0, 0? What's going to happen? So it's not just a question of memory as it applies to the human brain, Pegasus to Pegasus, Pegasus to hippocampus. It is memory also in the affairs of man as it applies Y2K to the computer industry. What could happen? And if even half, even a quarter of what they predict could happen, it would be a chaotic situation. That's why this Monty says, what can you do about it? What the heck can you do about it? Nothing. Go off, what are you going to go to Montana and build a house under the mountain? You can't. So what do you have to do? You have to do what the only possible thing that you can do, and that is find this place inside of yourself, look inside of yourself, collapse the wave function to a particle, take your instructions from above and carry them out.
Yep. And
that's what you have to do.
Christians of the past used to do that. They would like prayers, meditations for like hours on end a day, and
because otherwise you're just a person sitting on the planet Earth waiting for the whole thing to fall apart. And it will. And so I thought it was very interesting to consider Y2K, which is the memory of the computer industry in the year 2000 and the collapse there. And then in the year 2000, when the light comes down from supernova 1987A and impacting through the pineal gland of the brain, and Pegasus, the white horse, which is the hippocampus of your brain, the restoration of your memory. The restoration of your memory will coincide with the collapse of the computer memory.
Very interesting. He's so interesting.
What can you do about it? I think all these people say, we've had people have pretty heavy discussions in here, what they're going to do about it. You're going to do nothing about it. There's nothing you can do about it. There's just a grain of sand on the beach.
True.
But Monty told you 1,000 years ago what you have to do about it. Get inside of yourself, get together with the gentle one, the passive one, and flow above all of this. Welcome again. Last night I shared at Karlstad, New Jersey, with folks up there. We discussed some of the implications of astronomical phenomena that's occurring. And everything is kind of in a quiet mode right now. There hasn't been a whole lot new and exciting discussion.
Okay, I might stop it there because he seems to be shifting. But before I do, I just want to say some things that is it ChatGPT? Just some things that it says. I'm going to look more into this just to have a better argument. But I already like what it's starting with. Internet's poor. And I have Starlink now. Okay. Okay, so the let me see what's before this. Yeah, so I already gave examples of like Jesus' teaching in so many passages within the Bible that talk about protecting the vulnerable, the weak, the oppressed, etc., etc. Oh, someone's here. So the Old Testament is the earlier part of the Bible. It deals with creation, the history of Israel, the law given through Moses, prophets, kings, covenants before Christ, promises about a coming Messiah. It is merely the story of God's covenant with Israel, Isis Ra'el, the people, the church, before Jesus. The New Testament, which is Christianity, uh, is the later part of the Bible, right? When Jesus was born, essentially, is when Christianity technically started through him. It deals with the life of Jesus, his death and resurrection, the New Covenant, the apostles, the early church, salvation through Christ, and again, Christ oil, the spread of the gospel to Jews and Gentiles. So Jesus Christ and the New Covenant through him. The Old Testament was centered on the Old Covenant, Abraham, Moses, Israel, law, sacrifices, temple, priesthood. New Testament centered on the New Covenant through Jesus. Okay, so Luke 22:20, this cup is the New Testament covenant in my blood. So the Old Testament prepares and the New Testament fulfills. Law versus fulfillment. Old Testament contains ceremonial law, civil law for Israel, moral law, temple sacrifices, dietary rules, priesthood systems, and even the dietary rules have been updated in Christianity for things like eating pork and things like that. New Testament teaches that Christ fulfills the law. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. Matthew 5:17. Yeah. Okay, so sacrifices, Old Testament, animal sacrifices were central, and human sacrifices. New Testament, Jesus becomes the final sacrifice. So even through that, it's like Jesus is saying absolutely no more friggin' sacrifices that we're seeing friggin' everywhere. It's crazy, and so like let's stop this. And again, I understand like like him it being allegorical, Galatians 4:24, and the possibility that Jesus Christ, how he is described in the Bible, is based like there's a lot of connections to this earth and the cosmos that I think is a contained environment with like him being mentioned as the sun, great light, healer, and the 12 disciples or disciples or apostles, and the sun's travel path through the 12 constellations or zodiac signs, and we see that throughout so many different places of the world, them making that connection with the sun and the number 12 and the moon with the number 13, because of 13 full moons in a solar year. And then even like with spring break or the start of the new year, this is usually when the sun enters into Aries, from Pisces into Aries on or around the 20th of March of every single year, depending on if it's a leap year or non-leap year, based on the calendar system that we're using. And if you start your period on that day, the 20th of March, then the due date is the 25th of December. And that is representative of a rebirth in so many different cultures and civilizations of the past as well, like a rebirth or some kind of a prophet or a deity or a god that was born, a great light, or deity, etc., on or around that period, right? And then we have the winter solstice, which is when the sun is furthest away, when we have the shortest nights. Correction, we have the longest nights, shortest days, when the sun is traveling for a couple of days, the Tropic of Capricorn, the southernmost ring path that the sun travels. And so we have the longest nights, shortest days, and then that's when the sun is entering into Capricorn, another cardinal sign. Aries also being a cardinal sign. And so when after it starts going from the lowest point, when you create the sine wave, like the lowest point on the graph, that would be on or around that day, and then slowly starting to go upwards, and then we experience a little bit more sunlight during the day as it goes back inward from its outer ring path, and then we experience longer days, shorter nights, hotter weather, plant seeds, etc., etc. So there's just like a lot of symbology and connections there that it's hard for me to like differentiate between, to believe that it was a real person with all of those similarities and parallels from other cultures, other civilizations that were describing like the same type of person like thousands of years prior to. But it's also not to dismiss the fact there are places all over the world where do describe from around the period that Jesus Christ did exist, and what we're calling Jesus Christ, of this being as well, and with very similar, again, backstories. And so are there repeated times throughout history where we have incredible human beings that come to Earth and they do a lot of good, and then they're taken out because of it? I mean, I think that even with Charlie Kirk, that's a good example of present day of that happening. Okay, so removing the sacrifices, all that stuff. Jesus is the great high priest. Okay, anyway. So I wanted to make those differentiations. Yeah, I don't want to go on any more tangents. Someone's here to chop down a tree. I don't like that they're doing it, but this is an infected tree, and it hasn't infected any of the other trees, luckily. But we have to break it down and then have it removed. Can't even burn it. I mean, I guess with the weather we can now, but with the spores and stuff like that, to burn in the environment with these toxins or whatever, like, it wouldn't be good. And so, gotta handle that. So on that note, I will leave it at that, and I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.